I used to think drowning was quick. 1 second you're above water, the next you're gone. But James proved me wrong. Drowning doesn't take you fast. It holds on, drags you down, makes sure you don't come back the same. And if you do come back, it doesn't mean you survived. Last summer, my best friend James, his girlfriend Emily, my cousin Nate, and I drove out to Lake Blackwood, a secluded lake deep in the forests of Pennsylvania. No cell service, no marked trails, just endless trees and the lake, silent and still, like a massive black mirror. James was excited, claiming it was the perfect off-grid getaway. Emily wasn't convinced. There's a reason people don't come here, James. The place had a reputation. Whispers of disappearances, of a boy who drowned years ago and was never found. But we were young and we didn't care. We should have. As we unloaded our gear, an old man emerged from the tree line, his face gaunt and skin weathered. He stood there, watching us before speaking in a low, flat voice. "You shouldn't be here." James, always the skeptic, smirked. "Why's that, old man?" The stranger's gaze shifted to the dock. "A boy drowned here a long time ago. They never found his body. If you see ripples on a still night, it means he's looking for someone to take his place." Then, without another word, he vanished into the woods. We laughed it off, set up camp, and let the fire crackle as we shared ghost stories. But my eyes kept drifting toward the lake. It was so still, too still. Later that night, James got up to relieve himself, disappearing into the woods. Moments later, Emily screamed. His flashlight lay on the ground at the edge of the trees, but James was gone. We called his name, our voices swallowed by the night. Then, a splash. We turned to the dock, and there he was, standing waist-deep in the water, completely still. Emily sobbed. "James, get out of there." But he didn't move. His head twitched, tilting too far, his shoulders jerking unnaturally. In the dead silence, his voice came out wet and gurgling, like he was speaking from underwater. "He's still down here." My stomach dropped. Then, before we could react, something yanked him under. The water exploded around him, and he was gone. I rushed forward, but Nate grabbed my arm. "No, you'll drown." Emily sobbed. "He's under there. We have to..." Then James surfaced, but not like someone swimming, like something pushed him up. His face was blank, eyes lifeless. Then he gasped, coughing violently. We dragged him onto the shore, his body ice cold, his hands trembling. At sunrise, we packed up and left. Back home, James wasn't the same. He stopped sleeping. His skin turned pale. He flinched at the sound of running water. Emily called me one night, her voice shaking. He was in the bathroom, just staring at the sink with the water running. When I touched him, he turned and whispered. I can still hear him. She begged him to tell her what happened in the lake. Finally he did. When I was under... I saw him, James muttered, barely above a whisper. A boy, floating in the dark. His mouth was moving, but I couldn't hear him. Then, he grabbed my wrist. Emily's breath hitched. I fought to get away, but before I surfaced, he whispered something to me. James looked up, eyes hollow. Please, take my place. A few days later, he went missing. They found his car by Lake Blackwood. His keys were still inside. The dock was broken, as if something heavy had dragged across it. The water, usually still, was rippling, as if someone had just gone under. They never found his body. A month later, I went back to the lake. I don't know why. Maybe I needed closure. Maybe I needed proof. The air was heavy. The lake was still. Then, ripples spread across the surface, and for just a second, I saw him. James, standing waist deep in the water, his head tilted too far, his mouth moving as if whispering. But this time, he wasn't alone. A small, pale-shaped surface beside him. A hand, just barely visible, gripping his wrist. Then they both sank beneath the water. The lake was still once more. And behind me, hidden in the trees, a voice whispered, "Please, take my place."